Hello, this is Kelly Hamlin, and welcome to the Resiliency Coach podcast. This podcast showcases people who have faced difficult times and how they got through it. These experiences are real and sometimes raw. The people who share their stories are here to tell you you're not alone in your struggle. They share the tools and resources they use in healing. If you're looking for solutions for getting through tough times, contact us at www.resiliency.coach. My guest today that I'm interviewing is my friend Amber Price, and she's an expert. Amber has her master's degree in marriage, family, and human development, and is currently working on her Ph.D. in the same field. Her research focus is on authenticity and connection, and her mission is to help women love themselves for who they are so that they can find deeper connection with their partners, family, and friends. Today, Amber will be speaking to us about how to learn how to love yourself. So Amber, thank you so much for being on my podcast today and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Thank you. So what made you interested in this particular area?
You know, it's hard for me to pin down one thing. I think about it, and I've shared various aspects of my own story in various different settings, but I was thinking a little bit about this, and I'm the mom of 4 kids, and I love being a mom of 4 kids, but anyone who is a mom knows it can be completely draining, and you sacrifice a lot for those kids. And I think as women, often we're taught that, sacrifice is good, and it is good, but we're taught almost to sacrifice above and beyond and to just give and give and give and give of yourself. And then, you may do that in your marriage, or you may do that in some of your family relationships or friendships and things. And I feel like I found myself in a place where I had been mothering and caring for others and things for a lot of years, 15 or 16 years I'd had kids, and just found myself ready to take a look at myself and some of my own needs and interests, and to want to explore some of who I am, and to maybe to make a difference in the world. And I felt like I almost didn't even know where to find that in myself, because I was so used to just giving to everyone else. And so it took some work to really step into growing into who I wanted to become, to be the woman I wanted to be. And so I kind of just started down that path, and heard various teachers and therapists and things through some online courses talking about really becoming the woman you want to be. And that really resonated with me. And so that sort of started me down this path of really wanting it for myself and wanting it for other women, and helping them develop and grow into that.
I really like that. That's the reason why I started this podcast, is because I wanted to help people also. And it's fulfilling when we help other people, as well as we find ourselves when we do that. When we're in the service of others and helping, we truly find ourselves. And I love that you took the time to find the things that were interesting to you, and that you needed to take that time for yourself. And you're right, too often women serve themselves out of service.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
I heard somebody talk about filling your cup. Everybody says you got to fill your cup, and then you give out of your cup. No, I heard somebody actually say, put that cup in a bowl, fill that cup to overflowing, and you don't give what's in your cup, because halfway through the day, you're halfway depleted. Mm-hmm. And by the end of the day, you don't even have any energy for yourself, but you serve people out of the bowl that the water ran out of the cup from. And as women, mothers in particular, it's important to have that energy, and not just for your children, but for yourself. Because when you don't have that energy for yourself, that's when you get sick. That's when you're not feeling well. That's when you have emotional problems. And that's when you you're angry at yourself for being less than what you think you should be, which you are enough for who you are. You don't need to be more than who you are, but it's so important. So I'm glad that you took that time and you realized it was needed for you. That's true for so many women. So thank you so much for sharing that piece right there. That's important. So how does one go about learning how to love themselves?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows that self-love is important, or, as you said in the beginning, authenticity is sort of how I sum up what I research. I don't think any of us are in question that authenticity or self-love matters. Sometimes we just don't know how to really reach in and grab that. And I think the biggest thing is that we are so conditioned to look to others to fulfill that for us. I think about, we talk a lot about boosting self-esteem in this day and age, but self-esteem is often boosted by other people's or by living up to other people's expectations. So if I could just lose that extra weight that I think I need to lose, then I would feel good about myself. Or if I could just stop yelling at my kids and keep my house clean, or if I could just, establish these habits, if I could just live the way that I think I ought to be living, or be who I think I should, quote unquote, should be, then I would feel good about myself. Or even like when somebody gives you praise, then you feel good about yourself, right? Or you get that promotion at work and then you feel good about yourself. And those aren't bad things. None of those are bad things, but it's putting the way you feel about yourself on somebody else. And unfortunately, that's never going to work out, because somebody else is always you're going to let somebody down in some way or another, right? You make one person happy, you're going to make another person unhappy with the way you're living. So if your worth and the way you feel about yourself is placed in somebody else's hands, you're just never going to find that self-worth. So instead, you need to be able to shift it to finding that within yourself, doing the things that feel good and right to you, that feel genuine and full of integrity, and worrying less about how that measures up to other people. And that's when you can really move into finding that self-love, or that authenticity, or that ability to really care about yourself and who you are.
Great. So instead of saying, well, what does Annie think of me? Or what does my boss think of me? I got an A on my paper in the university, instead of looking externally, we look internally.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that we look internally at our values, our individual. What is it that you would say to look at? What is it? Pinpoint that thing.
I think that can be hard, right? Figuring out what is it, where do I go? I think the first step for what I believe is shedding the external. So I like to think of it almost like an onion. You've got all those different layers. And on the outside of that right now, you've probably got all these layers where you're just used to looking to other people to get that validation. And in a lot of ways, we're not even realizing. It's not like I'm saying, oh, I'm looking to my boss, for example, like you said, to get validation. The boss might be a little bit more of an obvious one, but a lot of times it's just a simple, like we're scrolling social media, and without even realizing it, we're comparing ourselves. We've got these others' expectations that we're trying to live up to. We think other people think, oh, in order to be a good woman, you've got to do X, Y, and Z, or in order to be a good mom, you've got to, keep your house clean, and whatever the list is. Those things are in our minds without us even realizing. And sometimes when we can start to recognize that we're doing that and shed those outer layers of the onion, then we start to find what's on the inside. Although I don't think we have to just focus on that. Like, some of the things that really, really matter to you. And sometimes it's worth sitting down and thinking, what are the things that are my priorities? If other people weren't dictating it, what would I be doing with my time? Or what choices would I be making? Or what are the things that really bring me true joy, make me feel really authentic?
So the first is to recognize that you are validating yourself through others. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is to
just asking yourself down at the core, who am I? What is it that I love? What is it that makes me me? Who am I if other people aren't weighing in? And it can be hard. Like, we're so used to having other people's thoughts always in our mind. It can be hard to get down to that. So I would always tell people, be patient in that process. It's going to take some time to peel those onion layers off and find that self that's down in there.
And what kind of tools would you say people can use to be able to do that, to get to that core?
One of my favorite ways to do this is to think about motivation. So we talk about motivation. We know what motivation is, right? Like why you do what you do. I like to think about it like a spectrum. So on the left side of that spectrum would be a really externalized motivation. So the things you're doing are completely and entirely motivated by wanting approval from others. For example, I like to use the example of going to the gym to work out. So if I was on the left end of that spectrum and entirely motivated by external sources, then I'm going to the gym only so that my body will look like I think other people want it to look. I've got to be the right weight, or I've got to have the right muscles, or, it's entirely motivated by external sources. On the other end of that would be completely intrinsic. I'm doing this only because I genuinely want to, or only because it feels good and right to me. So, the gym scenario would be, I'm going to the gym because I know that my body feels better when I do it, and that I'm healthier when I do it, or because I genuinely love to go to this. I love to go to Zumba class. That's the one for me. That's like, I genuinely love to go to a Zumba class. And so that would be more of an intrinsic motivation. And of course, it's a spectrum, right? So we're never going to land entirely on one side or the other in most things. But if you can kind of think about the choices you're making on any given day, or, just the behaviors that you're doing, stop and think, where would this land on that motivation spectrum? Is the reason that I'm doing this, that I want the approval of other people? Am I falling on that left side of that spectrum? Or can I move? What would it look like to move to that right side of the spectrum? If my choices were dictated more by that intrinsic desires, what would that look like? And so I think when you can kind of put it in that context and stop and just take a look at your life as you go daily, and the things that you're doing, and why am I doing this? What's my motivation for this? I think that can kind of start to help you frame it a little bit easier and to see a little bit more clearly what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it.
I like that question, why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And seeing the motivation, mindfully doing things rather
Mm-hmm.
than just doing them because you have to do them.
Right.
And often we do things just because we have to do them, right?
But that have to would probably be an external, like on the left side of that spectrum. We think we have to do them, but do we really have to? You could question that.
Yeah, I like that. I like the questioning part because it stops you for just that moment to take that breath and to contemplate, is this how I'm showing love for myself? Is this truly who I am? Mm-hmm. Or is this what I think my neighbors think I am? And do I really want to be that?
Right.
And that's important to recognize that motivation and to be able to say who you really want to be.
Well, to go along with that, I was also thinking, and this ties in, this is just overlapping with what we've already talked about, but if you've taken Psychology 101, you've maybe heard of the imaginary audience that teenagers have as they're developing. It's completely normal and natural for them to have an imaginary audience. And that's that they think other people's focus is all on them and everybody's watching them. And we can all remember, I remember sitting in junior high and thinking these things, you've got a big zit on your face and you're like, oh, I've got to sit so that, I'm covering my zit because everyone's going to notice that zit. Or, you just think everybody's focus is on you. And it's completely nerve-wracking, right? As a teenager. And for a little bit, we grow out of that. But I think how much of that is still part of who we are? Do we still think we have that imaginary audience that's watching us and expecting us to live up to certain things, even though reality is most people are living in their own worlds, worried more about what they're doing than what you're doing in that moment. And so when you can kind of shed that imaginary audience, it helps as well.
Absolutely. I love that. That's true. That often we think, well, how is Mary going to think about me if I do this? And it's because we imagine that other people are watching us.
Yeah.
But in actuality, like you said, they're thinking about their own life and trying to survive and thrive and go through their own difficulty and their own mindset. And they're not really thinking about us.
Right. And even if they are, again, why does it matter? We've got to be who we want to be. So it doesn't, even if there is somebody that's watching you and judging you, if you're doing what feels good and right to you, then that's what really matters.
Yeah. And if they are watching and judging, let them judge, let them watch. That's right. On them. That's not on you. Right. You're not doing the thing that's wrong. You're being who you are, which right. That's who you're supposed to be, is who you are, is that authentic individual who has joy, who right. has happiness. And other people's judgment will not give us happiness or joy.
No, and that's true whether it's positive or negative, right? It can feel great to get positive input, but if you rely on that in order to feel good about yourself, it will only be a matter of time before somebody's negative input comes, and again, you're going to fall short, and you're not going to feel great about yourself.
Absolutely. It's like putting on a coat in the winter coat time that's either 3 times too big or 3 times too small. It becomes very uncomfortable after a while. It's either too heavy or too tight.
Yeah.
And eventually something's going to have to give.
Right.
And it's either going to be emotional, because that often does happen, is that if we're constantly judging ourselves based on other people's views of us, we become somebody else that we're not.
Right. And that doesn't feel good at all. It feels really uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Yes. Now, how can we teach our children to love themselves?
I think there are 2 things that I would say with that. And I think the first and most important is that when we can do it, we're going to model it for them. And I think that comes down to the authenticity piece. So a big thing about authenticity is that you know who you are and you're aware of it and you're trying to live consistent with it. But part of it is knowing that sometimes you're flawed, and we all are. We're flawed, and we mess up every single day. And so when you can own that and truly be authentic for your kids, then they can see that that's okay. It's okay because mom messed up and then she acknowledged that and she apologized to me, or, she is working on overcoming some of the things that are challenging to her. And so then they're going to have permission to also be able to feel good about themselves, even when they feel like they might be falling short. And when your focus isn't on living up to other people's standards, then that's going to be something that they can learn also. So I definitely would say the best thing to do is to work on yourself and the way that you're living, because then they're going to be able to model and reflect that. And then I think also just the way that you talk to them. I think about the way often that we approach a little girl, even from the moment they're born, is, oh, isn't she so cute? She's so beautiful. It's on that external, and we start to show them, oh, it's the external things about you that matter. That could even apply to like grades. If your focus is entirely on the grades your kid is getting, rather than saying, wow, I see that you worked really hard on this assignment, or I can see that you're learning to be increasingly responsible, or, I love that you're a goal setter and a hard worker, more of those intrinsic things, and focusing on what they love rather than the external, what they look like or what they're achieving or things like that. That's going to change the dialogue for them and make it easier for them to develop into somebody who doesn't constantly rely on other people to feel valuable.
Absolutely. I like that too. And that could pertain to children with disabilities too.
Mm-hmm.
And often we focus on what they can't do rather than what they can do. And when we focus on a child's can and abilities rather than beauty or can't do, then we validate them as an individual that has place in our world and their world. And they add to our world because of their unique.
Right. Well, and maybe most importantly, they can start to feel that way for themselves.
Absolutely. Yes. I love that. And if you had advice for anybody that's struggling with self-love, what would you tell them?
I would tell anyone, you are good and valuable and worthwhile as you are and for who you are. And you don't need to look to other people to prove that. You don't need other people's approval in order to be valuable and worthy and good. You already are valuable and worthy and good. And the more that you can recognize the ways that you're looking for that approval and shed those, the more you're going to see that in yourself. But don't wait. Just learn to love who you are in spite of what other people are thinking, because who you are and learning to embrace that, learning to embrace the person that's inside, is going to allow you not only better overall mental well-being, but also to enter into deeper connections with other people. You'll be more willing to let other people see the full you, not just the things that you think they want to see, but to let them see the hard things and the vulnerabilities, because that's really when you form connection with someone, is when you let them see those things that you struggle with. And you'll find a lot of deeper connection and meaning when you're willing to let others see that part of you.
Yeah, you're right. When we do allow others to see our whole self, we open ourselves to more open friendships
Mm-hmm.
and people. And we also open ourselves to realize who's real and we
Right.
want in our life and those that we don't want in our lives.
Right.
And those who can't accept us for who we are, we need to let go.
Yeah.
We need to let go of those individuals and or have a heart to heart and say, look, this is who I am. And if you accept that, that's great. But if you can't, that's okay too. But we need to part ways if you can't accept that.
Yeah. I had an experience like that when I went back to school. It severed some relationships, and that was unexpected for me. But I knew that I was doing what was right for me. And so I knew that that was still the path I needed to go down. And I actually met somebody else at that time who said to me, when I told her I was going back to school, she said, oh, and I bet some people won't be as supportive of you as you expected, or something along those lines. And she was so right. And that was a connecting point for us. And she and I have become really good friends since then. And anyway, just, yeah, I agree. Letting people in, letting people see you is when you'll really feel those connections, because that's what brings us together as humans.
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing you for you and loving you for you, and seeing me for me and loving myself as well as you for who you are.
Right.
And recognizing that we're all humans and we all have flaws.
Yeah.
Like you said, and even loving those flaws, laughing at ourselves when we make mistakes. We're a human being. We make mistakes, and laughing at it and having fun with the mistake, and I like how you said too, showing your children that you're flawed.
Yep.
Because then they also expect for themselves that it's okay when they make those mistakes too.
Right. And that's probably true beyond just your kids, your friends and your neighbors and your spouse and your family. Letting them see that you're not perfect gives them permission also to show that they're not perfect.
And there's beauty in that. There's beauty in flaws.
Yeah.
I remember during the 1960s, and I can't remember her name, but there's some listeners, I'm sure, that will remember, there was an actress, a model, actually, that was brought on to a special magazine for her beauty, but she had a space in between her two front teeth. And so many people are like, oh, she's got this space in between her teeth. Guess what? She became like a top model and a top actress. That space actually brought beauty because she was different. It was her identifying difference, and that's her flaw. Whatever, it wasn't really a flaw, a space between your teeth. So what? If we're going to be that small as human beings, we need to reflect on ourselves also about who we are and what we expect out of life from others. And if we expect perfection on others, we need to realize that we need to expect perfection in ourselves, which will never happen.
Right. But I was going to say, I bet if you're expecting perfection from others, it's probably reflective of what you're expecting of yourself already. And that's not going to feel really great to you if you're expecting perfection from yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And how would you break that? How would you get out of perfection mode?
Well, I think, again, it's this, we have these idealistic standards that we think other people want us to live by. Like, oh, I can't possibly have a gap between my teeth, or, I've got to have a filtered face for Instagram, or I've got to always be smiling and happy. I mean, the list could go on and on and on of the things that we think we have to live up to, the shoulds or the supposed tos. And I think when you can start to challenge those and say, wait a second, the only reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because I think I quote unquote should, not because it's what feels right. That's when you can start to lose some of that perfectionism, start to realize that that's not even a realistic ideal to put on yourself or others. And you're just bringing yourself down when you do that.
Yeah, I like it. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today. And how can an individual reach you if they'd like to contact you?
I'm on Instagram at amber.a.price, or I've got a website, amberaprice.com. And I've got, some articles and things on there that are helpful. I just launched a course this last week about authenticity. So there's a lot there that they can find for help also.
Great. And can you spell your name, please, just in case somebody doesn't know how to spell that?
Amber. And then I've got the A, my middle initial, and then Price, Price.
Excellent. Thank you again, Amber, for sharing your advice, your expertise and knowledge with us. I'm sure there'll be many audience members who will gain from your expertise.
Yeah, it's been great to have this conversation.
Thank you again, audience, for listening to Amber. And remember, there is a way through your difficulty. Please seek out resources and people who can and will help you. Now, if you're looking for alternative tools for handling difficult times or moving ahead in life, contact us at www.resiliency.coach. Hope you all have a blessed day and a wonderful life. Goodbye.